The morning I found her suitcase in our hallway, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there in my coat, still holding my keys, staring at a pink carry-on that definitely wasn't mine. My husband was in the kitchen. I could hear the coffee maker running, hear him humming something low and tuneless the way he always did when he thought everything was fine. I set my keys on the entryway table, very slowly, very carefully, and I walked to the kitchen doorway. He turned around and saw my face. "Before you say anything," he started. I held up one hand. "Whose bag is that?" He set down his mug. He had this look. I'd seen it before, twice. When he'd done something he knew he couldn't talk his way out of but was going to try anyway. A kind of preemptive wince. "Her name is Tricia," he said. "She was in an accident 3 weeks ago. She's been staying at her sister's, but her sister's landlord said she had to go, and I told her she could stay here for a little while, just until she gets back on her feet." I looked at him for a long time. "She can't walk," he added, like that made it better. "Both legs. The doctors say it could be 6 months before she's fully mobile again." I think that was the moment something inside me went very, very quiet. Not the quiet of someone who has nothing to say, the quiet of someone who suddenly understands exactly what is happening and is deciding what to do about it. "Where is she now?" I asked. "Guest room," he said. "She got here this morning. I wanted to tell you last night, but you got home late and you wanted to tell me," I repeated. "Yes, but you didn't." He looked at the counter. "No," I nodded once. Then I walked down the hall, past the pink suitcase, past the guest room door that was slightly ajar, and into our bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed. I could hear the faint sound of a television from the guest room, something with a laugh track. I had been with my husband for 9 years, married for 6. I was 31 years old and I had spent most of the last 4 years trying to save a marriage. I was only recently starting to understand I had never actually been a partner in. His name was, well, it doesn't matter what his name was. I called him my husband for 6 years. That was enough. What I knew, sitting on the edge of that bed, was this. The woman in my guest room was not just a friend in need. I had seen the way my husband wouldn't quite meet my eyes. I had seen the texts he thought he'd deleted 8 months ago. I had driven past a restaurant on West Oak Street one Thursday evening and seen him through the window, leaning across a table toward a woman I didn't recognize. And I had told myself a story about a work dinner because the alternative was something I wasn't ready to face. I was ready now. I didn't go back to the kitchen. I went to my home office, closed the door, and I made a phone call. My sister picked up on the second ring. "I need you to listen to me," I said. "Don't say anything yet. Just listen." I told her everything. When I was done, there was a pause. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Really known?" "About 40 seconds, I said. "Suspected? A while. What are you going to do?" I looked out the window at the maple tree in our backyard, the one we'd planted when we moved in because my husband said it would be beautiful in October. It was beautiful. I'd never told him that. "I'm going to be very calm," I said, "and I'm going to be very smart." What my husband didn't know, what almost no one knew, was that 6 months earlier, my company had approached me about a position in their Chicago office, senior project manager, a significant step up from my current role in Seattle. I had turned it down because of my marriage, because of this house, because I thought things were going to get better. 3 days after finding Tricia's suitcase in my hallway, I called my company's HR director and asked if the Chicago offer was still available. It was. In fact, they'd been waiting. The next 2 weeks were the strangest of my life. I came home every evening to a house that felt like someone else's. Tricia set up in the guest room, which was just down the hall from our bedroom. My husband cooked dinner for 3. He would ask how my day was with this careful, almost theatrical normalcy, as though the situation were completely reasonable, as though this were just what people did. Tricia was polite, I'll give her that. She thanked me for meals I hadn't cooked, asked about my work, made eye contact in a way that was either very brave or very calculated. I was never sure which. She was 34, pretty in a composed sort of way, with dark hair she kept pulled back. She had a wheelchair she could navigate herself, mostly, though my husband would help her in the mornings when she transferred from the bed. I watched all of this from a very great distance. I had started staying late at work. Not because I was avoiding the house, though I was, but because I was building something. I had a lawyer now, a woman named, well, I called her my attorney, and she was very good. I had started gathering documents, pay stubs, account statements, property records. The house was in both our names. We had a joint savings account with $42,000 in it, money I had largely contributed over 3 years while my husband's freelance architecture work was inconsistent. My attorney told me what I needed to know, what I was entitled to, how to proceed. And then I found out about the LLC. I'd been going through bank statements, something I should have done years ago, honestly, and I found a series of transfers I didn't recognize. Small amounts at first, 200 here, 300 there, all going to the same account number. Then larger, my husband had set up a limited liability company 14 months ago. He was running architectural consulting through it. None of the income from that company had been reported on our joint taxes. He had been moving money out of our shared finances and into an account I had no access to. I sat in my home office at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, looking at these numbers, and I felt something settle into place in my chest. Not anger, something colder than anger, the particular clarity that comes when you realize you weren't just being cheated on emotionally, you were being managed, you were being set up to be left with less than you'd started with. I forwarded everything to my attorney. My husband and I had a routine those weeks. Sunday mornings, he would make pancakes. It was the one domestic habit he'd maintained without fail throughout our marriage. This one small, reliable thing. I sat at the kitchen counter the Sunday after I found the LLC records and I watched him flip pancakes, and I thought about all the ways a person can be two different things at once without the people around them ever noticing. "You seem tired," he said, sliding a plate toward me. "I've been busy at work," I said. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about that." He looked up. "There's a project in Chicago," I said. "A big one. My company wants me on site for a few weeks, maybe 6. I'm going to say yes." Something moved across his face. Relief, I thought. He was relieved. That makes sense," he said. "It's a good opportunity." "I think so too," I said. I ate my pancakes. They were good. They were always good. What I didn't tell him was that I had already signed the paperwork, that the Chicago position was permanent, not temporary, that I had already arranged for my things, the things that mattered, the things that were mine, to be picked up by a moving company the following Friday while he was at a site visit, that my sister was flying in Thursday night to help me pack what I needed, that I had already removed my half of our joint savings account, which I was legally entitled to do and which my attorney had advised me to do before I filed. That I had filed. The morning I left, he was still asleep. Trisha's light was on under the guest room door. She was an early riser, I'd learned. I stood in the hallway for a moment with my bag over my shoulder, looking at that thin stripe of light. I thought about knocking. I thought about a lot of things. Instead, I left an envelope on the kitchen counter with a note inside. 2 sentences. "The papers have been filed. My attorney will be in touch." I drove to the airport in the dark, the city still quiet around me, the Space Needle lit up in the distance, and I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Relief, clean and complete, like the first breath after being underwater too long. I was not okay. I want to be honest about that. The weeks that followed in Chicago were hard in a way I hadn't prepared for. I cried more than I thought I would, not for my husband specifically, but for the version of my life I'd believed in. For Sunday pancakes and the maple tree in October and the idea of someone who was fully on my side. But I also worked. I worked harder than I ever had, and it turned out I was good at this. The Chicago project, the new team, the city. I was very good at it. My husband called me 11 times in the first 2 weeks. I didn't answer. My attorney handled everything that needed handling. It came out, through the legal process, exactly what he had been doing with the LLC. He had been siphoning money that should have been reported as marital income. The discovery process was not kind to him. His attorney apparently told him to settle quickly and quietly. He did. What I received in the settlement was fair. More than fair, given what the financial discovery uncovered. I didn't feel triumphant about it the way I thought I might. I felt the way you feel when a complicated piece of work finally comes together, a kind of grim satisfaction. the satisfaction of finishing something difficult and doing it right. I heard, through my sister, that Tricia moved out of the house about 3 weeks after I left. I don't know where she went. I don't know what happened between them. Honestly, I found that I cared less than I expected to. My sister called me on a Thursday evening in November, about 4 months after I'd moved. I was in my Chicago apartment, a one-bedroom on the 14th floor with big windows, eating takeout and watching the lake. "How are you actually doing?" she asked. I thought about it. "I'm good," I said, and I meant it, which surprised me. "You know what gets me," she said. "He thought you were just going on a business trip." "I know," I said. "He probably thought you'd come back." "I know he did." Outside my window, the lake was dark and very wide. There was a freighter out there somewhere, slow-moving lights on the water. "Did you know?" she asked. "When you told him about Chicago, did you know then that you weren't coming back?" I thought about standing in that kitchen with my pancakes, watching his face when I said the word Chicago, watching him feel relieved that I was leaving so that he could stay there in my house with her, unbothered. "Yes," I said. I knew. She was quiet for a moment. "I'm proud of you," she said finally. "I mean it." I looked at the lake. I thought about the maple tree, which was someone else's to look at now. I thought about all the things I'd built my life around that had turned out to be temporary, and how strange it was that temporary things could still matter. How you could grieve something that was also a mistake. "Thank you," I said. We talked for another hour, just the two of us, about nothing important. About her kids and her new job and a restaurant she'd tried last week and whether I was dating anyone. I wasn't ready, I told her, and she said she understood. When I hung up, I sat with the quiet for a while. The city was loud outside, the way Chicago is loud. A kind of permanent hum, traffic, and wind off the lake and other people's lives going forward. I had started to like it. I had started to feel like someone who lived here. I was not the same person who had stood in that hallway, holding her keys, staring at a stranger's pink suitcase. I didn't know yet exactly who I was becoming, but I could feel it happening. Something being built in the space where something else had fallen. That's enough, I thought. For now, that is more than enough.